Assalamu alaikum. We are back with another episode of the Legal Decode, and today we have with us Ms. Maria Khan, who's a senior data and trust manager at TELUS, one of Canada's leading telecommunications and technology companies, where she focuses on data risk management, responsible AI, and privacy governance. With over 5 years of experience in data privacy, Maria has specialized in consent management and the development of user-friendly digital experiences. Prior to joining TELUS, she served as the data privacy legal manager at Security AI, where she led privacy legal research, privacy operations, and privacy education initiatives. Viewing privacy as a fundamental human right, Maria's work centers on supporting businesses in developing emerging technologies, including AI, in a responsible manner that adheres to privacy and ethical standards. She's also one of our mentors for AI as part of Women in Law Initiative. And as a mentor in the Will AI Mentor series, she's committed to supporting women lawyers navigating careers in technology and AI while fostering conversations on how legal professionals can contribute to the development of technologies that are privacy compliant and grounded in human rights principles. She's joining us all the way from Canada, so we're very happy that she's taken this time out on a Friday morning, her morning for us, and is here to talk about an issue that often gets overlooked whenever we talk about AI. So in our prior conversations also, we've spoken about AI from the perspective of legal compliance and laws and policies around this new phenomena that has taken over the world by storm. But what Maria is here to talk to us about is something known as the ethics around AI. And I think that is a conversation that is beyond just simple legal compliance. So we're very, very excited. Maria, thank you so much for joining us. How would you explain the difference between data privacy, data governance, responsible AI, and data ethics to someone unfamiliar with these concepts? So I thought we'll start right from the very basics and jump right into these terms that seem to be interchangeable, that seem to be related, but like I'm sure each one has its own unique dimensions. So over to you to help us understand what these terms mean.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nina. It's my pleasure to be here. And I think the starting question is absolutely helpful for us to lead the conversation forward. So industry-wide and globally, different organizations may have adopted different definitions to these terminologies. So I'm going to share my understanding and my perspective of these terminologies, and I will try my best to explain in a simple language and an easy to understand language so that everyone can easily grasp and comprehend. So starting with data privacy. What is data privacy? Data privacy refers to the concept of protection of the privacy and the personal information of individuals. So for example, if an individual has bought something from a shop and they have provided their credit card details, their name or email address while making that purchase. So that's the personal information, name, email address, and credit card details. And data privacy refers to how you will use that personal information. So the company is only going to use that personal information for the purposes of making that purchase and the transaction. And if the company wants to use it for any additional purposes, let's say for sending marketing emails, so then that may require the company to inform the person or may require the company to take their consent. So, and data privacy, it involves a lot of rights of individuals, right? For example, an individual has the right over their personal information, the right to be informed what the business is going to do with their data, the right to withdraw the consent once they have given the consent, the right to be able to transfer personal data from one company to another. So if you change your bank, and the bank, you have the right so that one bank can transfer all of your details to another bank. So this concept involves the protection of personal information. That's what data privacy is.
Right.
Yes, and you mentioned data governance. So data governance is the overall governance and the processes that help us handle, and manage data effectively across the data lifecycle. So, data governance, it involves from the data collection stage. Then it comes to the data processing stage, how, and then it data modification, whether the individual can modify the data. Then data withdrawal stage. Then once the purpose has been achieved, the purpose of the data processing, then the business has to delete the data. Or if the data needs to be retained for can be for very different multiple purposes, then what is the data retention period that we can apply, that this is for how long you can keep and retain the data within your system. So data governance is an overall broader concept,
Right. Right.
involving management and handling of data. It has concepts like how to classify the data, like this is sensitive data, you're using it only for specific purposes. This is the classification of data. This is the data that you are using for marketing purposes. This is the data that you are using for analytics purposes. So, data classification, data management across the entire data life cycle. Uh, that concept we can refer to as data governance.
Interesting. And all of this, I'm assuming, would require like some sort of a law uh, that needs to be complied with in terms of, what is private data, what is and how that has to be stored and all of that. Or is it dependent on in-house company policies? And there are countries out there who still don't have the kind of law that you require for data privacy and governance to work, and it's still within the very much within the company's own sort of governance structure.
Yes, so there are definite laws in place that provide us guidance on how to handle and manage data. In addition to laws, there are industry standards. There are some regulatory standards as well. And even businesses who are working in areas where there are no laws in place, they will be following some kind of standard or some kind of mechanism on how you can classify the data, because nowadays there's a lot of volume of data that the business needs in order to function, and data classification is so fundamental for anything,
Hmm.
whether you're building a new technology, whether you are using the data for AI. If a business does not know what data do they have, what are the different data categories, this is sensitive, this is confidential, this is employees data, if you have not done that mapping or classification, essentially you cannot ensure anything. You cannot ensure data privacy, you cannot ensure responsible technology innovation. So classification has become very, very fundamental, the data mapping and data classification for the businesses and organizations to function. And yeah.
So, how does responsible AI and data ethics then factor into this, this labyrinth of, digital sort of classifications that we have? How does responsible AI and data ethics relate to data governance and data privacy? And like, what do these terms mean essentially?
Yes. So responsible AI, as the name suggests, it simply refers to how businesses can build and leverage AI in a responsible manner. So it is an umbrella term in my understanding and in my view, which means it will have concepts of data privacy within it. Responsible AI will have concepts of data ethics and then some specific AI related requirements that the business needs to adhere to. So a business can either be developing AI itself, or it can also be outsourcing AI from a third party and using it for their own business and commercial purposes. And in both cases, the responsibility is to do it responsibly. uh, what does responsible mean? Responsible means you're not just considering privacy and legal considerations, but you're also going one step ahead. You're also looking at ethical considerations. What can be consequences to individuals or society as a result of this AI development? And so data ethics, it goes one step ahead. It goes one step beyond privacy and beyond legal compliance. It encourages businesses to think about ethical concerns. If the business is developing a new technology or new AI, think about what can be possible harms of this new technology to individuals, to society? Are there any specific groups in the society that will be impacted by this? So it basically encourages organizations to think about any unintended and intended outcomes of the technology from an ethical lens.
So it's kind of like due diligence that we used to do in terms of like for HR purposes, for human rights purposes, for companies. This is kind of like a due diligence, but in terms of the impact of AI. It also reminds me of environmental impact assessment reports that we have in the Pakistani
Yes.
system, where before any project, obviously, there's this kind of an assessment to see what kind of impact. So is this exercise similar to that, or does this require something beyond just the impact, but also in terms of and does it vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction as well?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned about due diligence and you're drawing the comparison with environmental assessment reports, because here in my world, we're also calling it a very common concept is risk management, which we can easily translate to environmental impact assessment and due diligence, which is a form of risk assessment or a risk management. So, what does this mean? This means that before you build or develop a new technology, you are getting together and thinking about this is what you want to achieve with this technology. What can be the possible risk? What can be the possible risk to individuals, to society? And you're looking at from the lens of privacy. So, are there any privacy risks? Now, here you will look at data privacy laws. And depending on which jurisdiction you are based in, depending on which company you are, you will know which privacy laws apply to you. So now you're going to understand if this AI technology that you're building is going to lead you to any violation of privacy laws. So you're going to identify all the privacy related risk. And then what you're going to see, what are some of the responsible AI specific risks, like the AI needs to be reliable, AI needs to be secure. This is what the AI intends to achieve, and this is what the AI does not intend to achieve. And from the ethical lens, you will see what are the harms, that potential harms that we may not be thinking about, but it can be possible due to the use of AI. Um, are there any societal groups that will be disproportionately impacted by the use of AI? Is the AI system have inherent biases? For example, there's a chatbot. Um, let's say there's an interviewer chatbot. So the company has is going to develop an interviewer tool where the job applicants they will speak to the chatbot, answer the questions, and then based on their conversation and result, the chatbot is going to the interviewer tool, AI tool, will going to proceed with applications or reject applications, and then so we'll send the selected applications to a human. From an ethical lens, we really need to question what are what is the chatbot going to be trained on.
True.
So, for instance, if there is a candidate who may not be fluent in the English language and is just answering in not very perfectly phrased sentences, so can that be a reason for his or her application to not go forward? uh, what about there is a woman, or there are some there are some individuals who come from a different age bracket, and they may have different ideas how the chatbot is going to take that information, and how the chatbot is going to train them. And all of this exercise, ideally, in an ideal world, should be done before the interviewer tool or the AI technology is made live and is available for
True.
everyone to use.
So I've always
Yeah.
been tempted to ask this question. We all often talk about the data bias or bias within the systems, but there is bias with, in humans as well. And we've often talked about that as well, that even if there's no algorithm involved, what about, the bias that people harbor? And this problem has been there even before these algorithms were there, and there's no guarantee that even if we are able to put in all these tests and make sure the algorithm is bias free, you never know that at the human in the loop level you will still experience that bias. So it's quite difficult
Absolutely.
to completely eliminate biases, and I understand that because I think the algorithms have also kind of inherited this from human beings, right? Like, because
Yeah.
obviously, while you're training, but that doesn't take away from the fact that yes, there needs to be more ethical considerations and inclusivity built into these systems, so that there is less and less chance and margin of these biases creeping in, at least at the algorithm stage. And then obviously, from that preliminary stage, at least there needs to be diversity, inclusion, and all of that taken care of, so that at least the results are not automatically eliminating people who should really
Yeah,
be considered. Yeah.
absolutely.
But
I mean,
it's always fascinated me how we talk about bias in the algorithm, but not like, we've just sort of moved away from the fact that human beings also harbor that.
because who writes those algorithms,
Yeah.
who is working on algorithms, it's basically the humans. You are giving, either it's a human who is giving who is training that algorithm, or you are giving a lot of historical data to algorithm, keeping in mind the historical data that we have available has a lot of biases. So if you search on an algorithm, I want to know who are the top CEOs of the company of the world, or can you generate me a picture of a CEO of the of a company? It's very possible that the algorithm is going to generate a male figure,
Yeah,
right?
that's so true.
Instead of a female. And why? Because it has been trained on all the historical data where most majority of CEOs in the world have been male instead of females. So, but how can we fix this? We can fix this by making a conscious and intentional effort of removing biases. So while we are training the algorithms, we are telling them, if someone asks you about giving a picture of the CEO, or keep in mind, CEO can be any gender, right? So then the next time you ask to generate a picture, it's very much possible that the algorithm is going to ask you, just like ChatGPT asks us, so do you want a female or a male? And
Mm,
then we can say we want a female or a male CEO picture. But another, for example, you as part of being a women in law initiative, you make a conscious and intentional effort to include women,
yeah.
right? And to remove biases that we have in our systems and in processes, whether those biases are impacting women, minorities, children, or any other vulnerable individuals of the society. Same case is with the now the technology and AI development. We will have to make a conscious and intentional effort to remove biases, because the data contains biases. There is no doubt about it. So we'll have to work with technologists on how we can reduce the possibility of biases within the data that we provide to algorithms.
True, and the speed at which things change or new data keeps coming in, I think this exercise would require it to be done very frequently, so that you're not sort of using outdated data either. Because I mean, the speed at which things are changing is also
Yeah.
very difficult to match nowadays, in terms of how fast you can train a model, and how fast whether it can generate results in real time, in terms of changing reality. So it's a very fascinating field. But yes, I see that there's a lot of scope for the kind of work that we do, so that these biases don't creep in. But if you could introduce one principle that every organization in Pakistan should incorporate into its data governance or AI strategy, what would it be and why?
Yeah. Thank you for asking this question. So, can I say like more than one things that I would want
Course,
ideally
of course. I mean,
Pakistani?
yeah, because see, right now we're in Pakistan, we're still in the development phase, and companies are still coming up. Even the state is still coming up with the policies. So that's why, benefiting from your experience in the West, I'd really like to know what you would recommend as the key principles that these policies and these principles
Yeah,
should definitely be covered?
absolutely. One is data mapping, which I already talked about. We discussed how important it is to understand the data you have and as an organization. We also talked about risk management. It's very important whether you are going to build a new mobile application or a new AI technology. You have to be proactive. You have to be proactively identifying all the risk. And one part of the risk management is the collaborative approach, where now the way I understand what do I mean by collaborative approach is bringing together different expertise in the risk management phase, in the ideation phase. And you're bringing together privacy professionals who understand data privacy laws, legal professionals who understand copyright laws, the legal implications of an AI system. You're bringing together data ethicists who understand the ethical concerns, and you are bringing together all of these experts with technologists, with developers, with our product and business team. So it's very important for all for the privacy and legal professionals to sit with product teams and business teams, so that collectively, as part of a collaborative process, we can identify these are the risks and these are the risk mitigation steps. This is how we can address these risks. So if this principle companies in Pakistan can adopt, I think it can eventually lead to a very responsible kind of innovation, because you are covering all your grounds. You're taking information from privacy, legal, and you're not doing it as an afterthought. You're
Hmm.
not doing privacy or legal compliance as an afterthought. You're bringing together all your expertise before at the time of the development phase. You're doing it proactively.
I think that's very important because mostly the knee-jerk reactions is what is very costly because in Pakistan mostly an incident happens and then there's a public reaction and outcry and then a law is made about it or some sort of steps are taken. So I think for AI it's very important for the companies from the company's perspective to be very proactive about it and to factor all of these things in before they roll the products out. And I completely hear you. But in
Hmm.
terms of ethical questions, so before launching any new AI enabled or data driven product, what do you think is the most ethical questions that an organization needs to ask itself? And are these the questions that they ask themselves internally only, or from these experts that they call on the table, as you mentioned? Or should ethical questions be, should they require wider public consultations as well? So on the one, so two parts to the question. A, what do you think are the most important ethical questions that these companies need to be asking? And who should they really be asking these questions from?
Very wonderful questions. One ethical question is what is the potential harm that this technology can have towards individuals or towards society? And harm is a very broad term.
Hmm.
What do we mean by harm? Harm can include biases, discrimination against other individuals. Um, it can include whether the AI tool or technology you are developing, is it accessible to only a selected. You're building a mobile application that provides education tools, um, and maybe that mobile application is only in English language, and you are going to target in a place where English or Urdu are predominant languages. So you're excluding 50% or more than 50% people who do not understand the English language. So whether it's accessible, whether it's inclusive, these are ethical questions. How can we reduce biases and discriminatory impacts? These are ethical questions that need to be taken into consideration.
So that's very
And
interesting. Yeah, because like I often tend to get confused between exactly, okay, so legally permissible is still clear, but where do you draw the line sort of in terms of what is ethically responsible, because ethics, as we've always heard, they can vary from person to person, they can vary from community to community. What is ethical? And I mean, these are subjective questions, right? So for a company to focus on legal compliance while handling data, I get that. But how do you kind of draw that line in terms of what is legally permissible and then what is ethically responsible? Does each company determine its own ethics, or does every field or every sort of sector has its own ethics, or is there some common language coming from any common standards that help us identify what ethical questions would look like in a given community or in a given set of circumstances? Does it depend on a case to case basis depending on the risk of harm with a potential product? I mean, there's so many ways to identify this, and with
Yeah,
each parameter, I think the level of ethics, the quality of questions that you're asking will keep changing. So how do you kind of
absolutely.
draw these lines and parameters?
I agree with you, and these are all very wonderful questions. And I don't have direct answers to any
Hmm.
of your questions
I'm
because
sure
these are the
these
questions
are just
that
like,
that are
yeah,
still emerging.
yeah.
So we really do, what is an ethical thing? It's so individual dependent. It is, yes, there is a cultural factor. One thing in my culture can be ethical, but in your culture it can be considered
Hmm.
non-ethical, and vice versa. So there are cultural dimensions, there are language dimensions. I don't have any clear answers
True,
to
I
your
understand.
questions because we are still, these questions are
Developing,
still
yeah,
developing.
yeah.
um where can we draw the line? You asked about,
Hmm.
for example, if the legal requirement is that you have to provide terms and conditions of your service. We have noticed the terms and conditions are usually provided in such small fonts that it's not easily understandable or digestible to an average user. And most of the time, the user will just click the accept button without reading the terms and conditions.
Hmm.
From a legal lens, you have done your obligation. They asked you, the law said to provide the terms and conditions, you need to give all of this information and disclaimer to your user. You have done that part, but is it really ethical to do it in a manner that the individual does not understand at all in such a small font size that you are deliberately making an effort so that they don't read the terms and conditions? Is it ethical to do it because you are trying to influence the individual? um so for example, if you have someone's geolocation data, if somebody is using mobile information and you're capturing the geolocation data, and now based on geolocation data you start sending the person, you share that geolocation information with third party advertisers who will send them marketing messages. So you're passing by McDonald's and you receive an SMS on your phone, just 100 kilometers away, we have a new deal in McDonald's, Happy Meal. Would you want to try? And you will be surprised. How do they know that I'm just 100 meters away from McDonald's? So, because, so the, and there are ways to do that. And the ways is that you inform the person, we're collecting your geolocation data, we're sharing it with third party advertisers. The advertisers can include fast food chains, they can include clothing outlets, and as a result of which, you will receive marketing emails or marketing messages on your SMS. Are you okay with that? If you're not doing that part, then that's an ethical question, that how you are going to use that data for such unintended purposes. The individual may
I'm
have
so
given you,
glad you
yeah,
brought this up, because I mean, in Pakistan, there's this, I don't know, maybe all over the world, this is this thing. And this obviously was also, I was going to come to my next question, which is exactly about this as well. And here we always think that, oh, the phone is listening, it has ears, they're sort of, so over here, I think lay people kind of interpret uh, this I wouldn't call it breach of privacy, but like these ethical questions in a way that that sort of shows that maybe, these phone companies are always listening into our conversations, and we're just having a conversation about a product, and the advert starts coming in, and you start seeing that product everywhere on
Yeah.
your social media handle as well. And it's hard to figure out for a layperson as to what are the technical dynamics behind that makes all of these things happen, or what the legal dynamics are. Because you mentioned about the font size, but it also, the language itself is a barrier, in the sense that the legal phrases that are used often, in the way those terms and conditions are described, sometimes even that, even if you know English, you might not be able to comprehend the
Yeah,
complicated way
absolutely.
in which those, terms are written, right? So that itself is an ethical question. How user friendly should these terms and conditions be or not? And also, is consent always enough to justify collecting or using data? Because I mean, I do get a lot of pop up saying, "Do you consent? Cookies accept, whatever," And so, is that like really? Is that yes or no really enough to justify collecting that kind of data? Because many people, as you yourself said, either influenced to click "I agree," or they do so without
Yeah.
understanding what they are really consenting to. So, A, is it justified? And B, is consent still meaningful in those situations? Because it's just coming out of an inconvenience because you want to get on with your research or whatever, you want to explore the website, and here's a pop-up saying that no, you have to first read this and accept this. I mean, nobody has that kind of time or attention. So
Yeah,
रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी यूजर्स की ही है, या ये कंपनीज की, मतलब who is really responsible for, whose burden is it really? So that,
it's the
yeah.
company's burden. So law we have noticed historically that every law may have started with an ethical concern. इसी तरह लॉस बनते हैं सोसाइटी में, कोई एथिकल कंसर्न पहले अराइज होते हैं,
Hmm.
उसका लॉ नहीं होता. मेजॉरिटी ऑफ सोसाइटी उसको कंसिडर करती है कि ये एक एथिकल क्वेश्चन है, एक एथिकल कंसर्न है, तो फिर इवेंचुअली लॉ मेकर्स उस पे स्टेप लेके उसको
Right.
लॉ की फॉर्म दे देते हैं. बट the fact that the technology is developing in such a rapid pace that it's the lawmakers are not picking up, and
Yeah.
that's why the data ethics becomes important right now for us. For example, in Pakistan, if we don't have data protection laws implemented or enforced yet, then we should resort to what are the ethical principles. There are privacy laws which still have guidances like on whether you can use the data for marketing purposes or not. Globally, there are laws in place, but companies are always find can also find loopholes in laws, and can still say that this is how we're complying with law. So then the ethics becomes important, that
Hmm.
finding the loopholes to ensure compliance with law is okay, but is it really ethical to do that? um Now, coming to your question on consent, so consent is one of the means to be able to justify the data processing and data collection, and it's not required, it's not necessary in every situation. I come to you and I want to say that I want to purchase this product from you. Okay, I have to give you my credit card details. Without giving you my credit card details, how can you make that transaction? It's not possible. So here it is not consent, it's a contract. It's a buyer and a seller contract, right? Similarly, if I am an employee and I am applying for a job, you have to run the background check, and for background check you want to ask what are my criminal background details, what is my previous work history. You will ask me all those questions. Why are you asking me all these questions? Because one, this is your company policy. Second, because even employment laws somewhere have asked companies to run criminal background checks on people you're hiring. So the company is res- required to do that because they have to follow the law. Is it consent of the employee? Can I say no, I want to apply for the job, but I don't want to consent to background check? I
Yeah.
cannot say that,
Right.
because here it's the consent is not relevant. Here it's the legal obligation, the contract is more relevant. So where does consent becomes relevant? In anything which is which is an additional or a secondary use of data. I In the same example, I told you I want to purchase the product from you. Yes, you can take my credit card details to make that transaction. um Now, can you send me marketing emails on my email address? That's where consent is important, because that's optional, that is not necessary for me to buy the product from you. So
True.
that's where consent becomes relevant. Here you need to ask my consent, and inform me that, okay, and if I say yes, you can send me marketing emails, then I will tell you, okay, we're sending you marketing emails, but again, you have now my email address. You cannot sell or share my email address with other parties, with other companies, because you have not asked me about that. I have given you consent for a limited specific purpose. I'm consenting you to receive marketing emails on my email address from you, not from other
From
companies.
other people, yeah.
And
Because
if you want, yeah,
no, no, sorry, please go ahead.
sorry. And if you want to share it with sell it, then you again will have to inform the person and take consent for that specific purpose.
So this is happening because of law, or is this also part of data ethics?
This is now part of data privacy laws.
Right.
Consent, whether it's legal obligation, whether you are relying on contractual obligations, this is all covered in data privacy laws. Anything which is one step ahead, which is not covered in privacy laws, uh,
Will
for
be in
example,
the domain of ethics.
yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, so sometimes we do get emails from companies saying that, if you want to stop receiving emails from us, you can inform us here or there, or you can click this button or whatever. And once I tried that and it didn't work, I still
Yeah,
receive emails from that company. I'm just like, okay. So, then eventually I either put them in my spam folder or something, but it's become such a nuisance because, our mailboxes are now full of just marketing emails and they take up so much space also. So it's not just an individual issue, like now that we've spoken about it, and I look at it from the perspective of a wider public concern. There's so much marketing, digital material that lands in our inboxes, and it stays there, occupying space, occupying bandwidth. uh, there must be, some sort of a more public sort of impact of this kind of marketing that is taking shape these days because of people having digital existences. What do you have to say about
yeah,
that? I mean, how does one deal? And now it's become so integral that every time you have a banking transaction, your bank emails you. Every time you update a subscription, you get emails, or your subscription is about to end, you get emails. I mean, this, and some of them are important sort of receipts as well. So I'm not saying that all of those emails are junk, but majority of them
yeah,
are, and they're in thousands in my inbox also. Like, it's full of random junk mail, and who has the time to even sit and delete all of that? But it is occupying so much space. So that must be,
yeah,
I think, a wider impact in terms of storage and in terms of, you know, uh, I don't know what to call it in terms of, in the data language, but it's all junk, right? So how does one
yeah,
deal with that?
absolutely. It's not just the junk that you are receiving in your email folder, but also on their end, companies have so much of data which they're not supposed to retain within their data systems. Like your email address is stored in so many data systems you may not be aware of. Um, and that's where the user-centric designs become important. That, okay, fine, I want to receive marketing emails, but you provide me an opt-out opportunity. And as you mentioned, when you wanted to unsubscribe, it was a completely different step for you, and it just didn't work out. So here, we businesses, they need to make an effort to make their digital experiences user friendly in a UI that the users can easily understand and pick up, so they know exactly how to navigate. how to opt out, how to unsubscribe, and it's not difficult for them. So they should be able to unsubscribe on a single click, and it should not ask them to go to this link, go to that link, because then it will be a cumbersome journey for the user. Companies, they deliberately make the processes non-user friendly so that they do not unsubscribe. But now with the rise in data ethics worldwide, and now companies are trying to become more responsible when they are providing their services, so they have started taking steps on how they can make their processes and digital experiences and interactions more user friendly, so that the user is easily able to navigate. um,
I
yeah.
understand, but uh, so even still, like, so if a law, if a company breaks a law, it's very easy to kind of identify that because it's written in black and white, and you can still kind of quantify it or see it. But when it's an
Hmm.
ethic, when it's about ethics, or when it's a question of ethics and it's not being maintained, how does the user even find out? Number one, it's I mean, in some situations it may be more easier for them to pick on this, but in many situations the users may not even be aware of all those ethical considerations that were discussed in a boardroom, for example, but then whatever happened to them, nobody ends up knowing. So how do you kind of monitor that an ethical questions breach or whatever, if it happens? And then who should be responsible for data ethics within an organization? I mean, is it the legal team? Is it the compliance officers, the data scientists? Is it the leadership, or is it all of them together? I mean, are there ethics boards or ethics committees? Are they effective, or do they sometimes just become a box ticking exercise within companies as well?
Yeah, and it's the within the company, it is the leadership who is responsible, and I would emphasize again on the collaborative approach, where we're not putting responsibility on one group or a one department.
Right.
Because if we are doing that, that means only that department or those specific people were responsible to building that technology or the user interface in the first place. If if you want to, if you are building a user interface or of your mobile application or any AI technology, you need to bring in together privacy experts, ethical experts, and then technologists and developers. All of them are providing their insights from depending on their subject matter expertise. So essentially, everyone is included in the discussion, and there is an ethical component which can be applied across all these different subject matter expertise. So I don't think there is one organization or one committee that can be held
Right.
accountable.
Right.
Ultimately, it is the leadership that decides how to innovate and how to develop technologies in an ethical and responsible manner. The responsibility falls on the leadership and on the organization. But within an organization, the different departments of subject matter expertise, they need to be brought in together. And I think the first question that you asked was that how would the individual know if their data has been breached, or if the a big individual does not know, right? So it's the responsibility is on the organization to make an intentional proactive effort. Individuals, they will find out very later at the stages,
Mhm.
right? um so in the algorithm example, where a woman can notice that I don't see a women CEO when I ask it to generate a picture of the CEO. That's at that time the individual can find out about it. Or the individual is finding about it when you're receiving a lot of emails in your junk and you don't know how to do navigate that. So it's proactively organizations can take steps to protect the privacy of personal information of individuals, to maintain their rights, and individuals do have rights. They You can always go and ask an organization what data I have, what data you have about me, and
Okay.
they have an obligation to provide you the access, that we have your name, we have your email address. But it's a lot about, also about creating more awareness in society, more education on data privacy and on AI and the use of technology.
I
um
understand that because
yeah.
again, like these things are just now only beginning to surface as issues, or within the human rights sphere, because earlier on these were just technological developments happening within innovative businesses and all of that. But I think now the conversation about rights, about privacy, about how data is stored, I think that is now reaching more and more people, more and more countries. But even then, it still comes to my mind whether, like sometimes when we're doing law, we're told that some companies do forum shopping and they kind of choose a certain jurisdiction to fight a case in because say
Yeah.
it has more favorable terms. I was just thinking, uh, does this happen within this, data privacy sphere as well, that companies choose to kind of register in jurisdictions where they will have, lesser requirements to comply with such laws and therefore, have it easy? Or so this does this kind of foreign shopping happen within the tech industries as well? I mean, why do we see so many of these tech firms within the US and not so many in Europe, for example? And there's a lot of these services don't get um, trickled down to Europe or don't serve European markets for the very strict GDPR policies that they have or other strict laws that they have as regards data privacy. So is there some sort
Yeah.
of forum shopping happening? Like, are companies picking and choosing jurisdictions based on the level of compliance?
Um, I'm not sure about picking jurisdictions because so what decides whether a privacy law will be applicable to your company is where the company is based in, and plus who is your target audience. Even if you are based in US or Canada, but you are providing services to individuals who are living in Europe, then for those individuals, you have to ensure their data privacy as per European privacy law standards.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So the applicability of law is dependent on the jurisdiction, the area, and also who are your users. And in today's world, big companies, they are targeting different geographies. They're providing their services in Europe, they're providing their services in Asia, and all across the world. And yes, tech companies, they still find loopholes um, within privacy laws to say, hey, we have complied with privacy laws, like um, showing the terms and conditions in a very small font, in example of a loophole within the laws, showing the consent banner, um, but that consent banner which is not adequately designed, which is not informed, which is basically doing nothing, but it's just a banner that, hey, we are using cookies. That can be an example. Now, privacy laws are developing, regulatory authorities, fortunately, are developing and they are picking up these issues. And we have very comprehensive guidances both in North America and Europe, which tells you exactly this is how the cookie banner should look like. This is how the information should look like because they have understood the company's practices where they were using a lot of dark patterns and were influencing the users. So now we how the user experience should look like, now it is becoming part of even data privacy laws, and we are seeing this. um so yeah, I mean,
So
this
there's
does
more.
that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So I understand. So that now it's sort of more harmonized in the way these things need to be complied with, because it kind of depends on the users and obviously where the jurisdiction where they're based in. So gradually, I am seeing like a shift towards more global standards emerging and more sort of global consensus emerging as well, as far as
Yeah.
is concerned, although there has been like a regional development of these policies or maybe country to country development of these policies. But I see now, with the way technology is being used across the globe, as you've mentioned, and even in space, I see more and more harmonization and more global consensus emerging as to how
Yeah.
to be regulated and what are the
And I
best
think
practices.
it also depends a lot on the technology companies and how big or small the companies is,
Hmm.
because these technology companies, they make a lot of profit by building the technology, by building that AI. Let's take an example of Meta. The profit it is making, it's so much, it's enormous. And what And on the other hand, if they're violating a data privacy obligation, for example, Meta's face cookie banner is not compliant with data privacy laws, yes, they may be subject to fines as per privacy regulatory authorities, but they're willing to take that risk because that amount of fine is not that much
Hmm.
compare in comparison to the profit they're getting on the technology or on the service they're building. So
So
it's a
capitalism,
profit and
capitalism is at play here as well, and the same that we see
yeah,
in
absolutely.
other
So the
businesses.
technology companies, they will deliberately choose to violate laws. They will say, okay, we want to do this, but this is not compliant, but we will still do it because
Because the
if
cost of
even
it
if we are not
is
compliant,
not as
we
much
can
as,
still
yeah.
pay the fine. We can pay this amount of fine, but on the contrary, we're going to get this much a larger profit.
Yeah.
So as a result of which they will take the risk. Smaller companies and organizations, they are not in a position to take that risk. So they comply with privacy laws more effectively as compared to bigger organizations.
Right. That's, I suppose, just the law of the jungle that we're in. That makes a lot
Yes.
of sense, and I'm glad you sort of linked it to the economics of it all, because ultimately compliance is again a question of profit or loss, and if it comes down to that, then the level of compliance will vary with uh the level of profit that you make as well, or how big your size is as a company. So that's a very interesting
Yeah.
thought. But coming back to my last question, and something that's obviously very relevant, because both of us are lawyers, and this is something that takes us, like I would like you to wear your lawyer's hat now and, sort of shift the focus from companies to the legal community. Because as AI and emerging technologies continue to evolve, I'd like you to tell us, how do you see the role of lawyers changing along with that? What skills and perspectives should legal professionals develop to remain relevant in a future where ethical considerations may be just as important as legal compliance?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Um, so you asked about what skills lawyers should develop.
Yeah.
I think number one, lawyers in today's age, we should be able to translate laws and the legal requirements in a language that product and business teams can easily understand. That's our job. That's part of our job as in-house counsel lawyers or as lawyers who are advising on a technology. Um, and it's not an easy job because laws are written in different language jargons which the technology people and the product and business teams, they may not be able to understand and comprehend. So we need to read the law, understand it, and translate it in a language they can understand, which means we need to tell them exactly what operational steps they need to take.
Hmm.
They don't care about what is the section of the law, what is the principle, what is the legal theory. All they care about, what do we have to do? Tell us. You want us to show a consent banner? Okay, we'll show a consent banner. So a lot of interpretation of law and translating it for the product and business teams. Um, One another thing, if there is, I really think if we are legal professionals who are working in product and technology industry, we need to understand the technology and product,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you are a lawyer of a mobile application, it's not it is important for you to understand how the mobile application works. I'm not saying to understand all the technicalities and the back end working, but at least you should be able to know the front end of the application. Without knowing the product, without knowing the product, you cannot be a good lawyer or you cannot support your business in developing that product in a responsible manner. So we have to learn about AI or any new technology um, that
That is
that you
emerging.
are providing support on. One another thing, and that's maybe specifically relevant for Pakistani lawyers, is that even if we do not have data privacy laws in place yet, there is a draft bill and there is a national AI policy. We need to remain updated on what's happening in the global
Hmm.
landscape.
Yeah, that's true.
What are the global legal requirements on privacy? What are the global responsible AI standards? This is important for us to remain updated because ultimately all of that will eventually it will come to Pakistan, right? So
Especially because
Pakistan
if we
cannot
want
operate.
the businesses to be competitive and if we want to capture market shares, particularly through our exports, I think it's very
Yes.
important, the dream of a digital Pakistan and exporting software to the rest of the world, all of that also the government has to then ensure that there is that kind of awareness and capacity within the country to understand and comply with whatever
Yeah.
laws there are. But see, like again, complying with laws is still easy, but when it comes to these ethical questions, how does a lawyer navigate those? Because now you are increasingly being asked to focus on these ethical questions as well, which previously lawyers were always trained on very legalistic lines, that this is the law, and you how do you sort of separate it from politics and from policy and from all other considerations. But here in this spectrum, I feel that lawyers will not be able to do without understanding what ethical questions are, what they mean, and how do you navigate those delicate and sometimes
Yeah.
even sort of parameters, because as we've talked about, ethics in one country, in one place, in one industry may be very different from another. So anything for lawyers on that front, if there's any message that you want to give, how can lawyers navigate that ethical consideration line?
Firstly, we need to understand the global and industry standards. So we have laws in place, but we also have standards in place
Right.
that talk about responsible AI and that talk about data ethics. Um, and we need to understand that what is the global requirement and standards, not just what are the privacy laws that apply to your particular company, but what is happening in the global landscape. And then again, I would say it's a difficult question that you have asked, Nida. It's not easy on
Right.
how lawyers can navigate ethical questions.
Yeah.
Uh, all I know, we should navigate ethical
Right.
questions. This
Right.
is the discussion we should be having. How, right? If a legal question is, can we do this with data? The ethical question is, should we do this with data
Mm.
or not? Right? um, if you are intentionally building a product that is going to discriminate a specific group of society, the question is, should we do it or not? Should you recommend as a lawyer to your organization to do it or not? If you know that your users are not understanding how the AI works, they have no clarity on it, they don't know about it, should you be going forward with this, or you should maybe be more transparent with individuals, right? Even if the law is not requiring you to be transparent at one point, maybe the ethical consideration is for you to be transparent, to inform them, um like taking steps in the same example, the interview tool that the employer is having. You are going to evaluate the tool to remove the biases, telling the tool to not exclude people on the basis of their language, not exclude people on the basis of their age group or on the basis of their gender,
Right.
giving instructions to the tool that keep it strictly to their professional experiences. And if you are rejecting a candidate, write down your reasons of rejection. And then a human in the loop process is also very important. That even if there is AI and innovation or a technology, there is ultimately at the end a human who is reviewing the responses of AI. And that's an ethical demand.
So, I'm so sorry. I did say that that would be my last question, but I'm just, because my mind is now, sort of thinking of all of these dimensions. I was just thinking that, so if a company is working against a law, breaks a law, you're saying that there may be a fine or whatever, and they've kind of calculated that in. But are there any consequences for the companies for breaching these ethical considerations? They're probably not coming in from the legal sector or the regulatory bodies, but do you think that there is any kind of impact that the companies can still suffer for being in breach of
Yeah.
the ethical considerations outside the regulatory stricto sensu legal sphere? And if so, what could that look like?
I think one of the biggest consequence would be the breach of trust of their customers and users.
Right. Right.
right? Companies need to understand that the protection of rights of their individuals, whether we are talking about human rights, whether we are talking about ethical concerns, is within their commercial interest, because eventually all of these will help together to develop a trustworthy relationship with your customers. Even if you are complying with privacy laws or if you are fulfilling all the legal check marks, but at the end you may not have that relationship with your customers, and you may not have that brand value or
Hmm.
reputation.
Hmm.
So that in order to build that relationship with your customers, to build that reputation and a brand value, it is important to protect their rights. It's important to take into consideration the ethics
The ethics.
of developing the technology and the service you're providing.
Thank you so much. What a perfect message to end this conversation on. That's exactly what I was hoping you would say, because ultimately, I think it is a question about, the reaction from the people, the public, and, ultimately for all companies to uh, they would like that public acceptability. They would not want, because the kind of backlash nowadays is also very severe and swift, in shape of trolling or in shape of social media
Yeah,
outrage and all, and it spreads really fast and really quick, right? So it's getting
yeah.
tougher for companies, but of course these
And these are not easy topics. We don't have very clear answers to any of the questions we have discussed today. I think our discussion has been quite broad in
yeah,
today's session. But I'm so glad to be talking to you about this, because these are all emergent topics.
yes.
We don't I don't have clear or definite answers, but good thing is we are heading towards the right direction to find the
And
answers.
at least that conversation has started happening, because I think before this time, people weren't even having this conversation as broadly as I see them now, asking questions, and I see the kind of interest that they now have. Because earlier, I think, um, even to understand what privacy means in an online space was something which was very misunderstood within a lot of people.
Yeah,
They would think that, since you're online, what privacy are you talking about? They would think that it's already a public space and public domain, and you're already out there. So what privacy are you talking about? But now I think, particularly because of national security considerations as well, and we've seen how data breaches have led to, have been sort of used in state of war as well against certain senior leadership of a
yeah,
country, and how that kind of data was used. And so like now it's no longer just a question about companies and marketing and business and profits. It's become a security threat in terms your
yeah,
online presence. And it's not just a state of war, even within a certain political standoff in a country, even between citizens in the state, the relationship is such that now this geofencing and all of these technologies that are being used to locate people.
yeah.
I mean, these questions have become human rights issues in much broader context than just simply a business context
Absolutely,
or a marketing
absolutely.
context. So I think those incidents have propelled the whole conversation about privacy and data and your safety online to an extent where people have a renewed interest in finding out, what is happening, who are the companies, who owns these companies, who is behind these companies, are they from the enemy,
Yeah,
alliance.
absolutely.
It's just so it's become much more live, the debate, and the connotation of it, the parameters of it, the contours of it have expanded so much that obviously
Yeah,
it wasn't possible to cover all of those aspects in this one session. But thank you so much for laying out so clearly, at least, where the compliance ends and where the questions of ethics sort of start. And I think that's a very important distinction that often gets overlooked. So, Maria, thank you so much for drawing that for us. And we hope to have more sessions with you on similar but related topics, in
absolutely.
days to come.
Always my pleasure. Thank you so much, Nida. The work you've been doing for women in law, it's really phenomenal. I've always been inspired by Women in Law Initiative and your efforts.
Thank you so
towards
much.
bringing visibility for women legal professionals. That's really incredible. So thank
Thank
you so much for having me.
thank you so much.
Thank you.